Is it better to be born good, or through great effort overcome your evil nature? Welcome back to another Bootleg Identify. Today we're going to be talking about lore and setting up pretty much all the setting info you might need, possibly even more than you might need. And yeah, we are doing something completely different. By completely different, I mean I could not figure out a way to structure this stream in any way that feels I can't even remember what word I'm trying to do. Coherent, maybe. But yeah, I can't figure out how to do it, so fuck it. We're gonna do this as best we can, meandering across whatever topics come up, and do our best. Not today, Barango. Just because I'm hoping some people just take advantage of the hey, listen with questions like, hey, how do I do this or that with this idea? And it's a lot easier to react with just me in chat. I appreciate the offer. But yeah, to start with, I have three different windows to of just stuff to bounce around with. We're gonna start with here's internet, not visible. There we go. And Roll20, because I have a bunch of handouts here with info and stats and stuff like that. Kind of make some of my points. I also have GIMP with a bunch of images and stuff to work with there. And lastly, actually, do I have a third? Oh, and I also have just two images that I'll reveal as necessary. But yeah, I have a few maps. I'll just like nothing important on them. It's just if I feel like swapping up the background here. Okay, where to start? Where to start? Let's see. I think I'm gonna start with some things that I've done, how I've come to create them. First and foremost, hey Brazen. Yeah, we're not doing any specific world building, just kind of like talking about my techniques and whatnot. But yeah, we're gonna start with actually some of the older stuff I have. Hasn't actually. I don't need to show to everyone because it's only me in here. These mushrooms. Yeah, we've got elemental mushrooms, the kind of let's see, the nature spirits that abound if someone actually starts communicating with them. These things are well, two of these four, specifically the two I have not shown already, the fire and water ones. Let's see, I've just world building. Got some. It's Valencia. Oh yeah, yeah. The look, little funky little jester look. The way all four of these guys became part of my setting lore, even though they actually haven't come up for my players. Uh, Fire and water mushies here were actually part of an adoptable thing on Tumblr. A guy was like, "Hey, I've got these four mushroom things. Anyone who wants to pay, I think it was like $5 or $10, you can use it for whatever." Just here, the designs I saw. These two, I'm like, elemental mushrooms. And the other two were already bought at the time. So I contacted the person. I can't remember if they're a guy. God, it's so long ago. I don't even remember the name of it. This was before I even moved to the 5e system with my setting. Yeah, I saw these students like, hey, I want to get both of these, but also, can I commission you for two more? Because I had these elemental mushroom ideas. And they were like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's figure it out. That's how we got the air mushroom here, who looks a little bit manic and crazy, just with the way the one single eye with a pink, not sclera. I'm just going to say sclera because the actual term does not matter for this. The earth guy looks kind of slow, steady, crumbling apart of the pieces there. And there's a reason for that, even though. Alright, we've already hit the first thing with a lack of planning. I forgot to move their info into there. Let's see, where is my sheet? Here we go. A document simply called Mushroom. It covers the 6 elemental mushrooms, because I came up with 2 more, but I'm like, they don't need pictures. They're going to be very, very hard to actually find. But yeah, let's go ahead and minimize the ones I'm not talking about, so it's easier to envision them for all y'all. Let's see. And the first one is actually the water mushroom here. Their variety, at least in the common languages for my setting, are referred to as the witch's nip. It's not so much a water spirit as ice, found in the cavernous regions of the plane of water. Although a majority of the darkest regions of this... sorry, I skipped a line there. Although a majority of this plane is underwater, these mushrooms are easily found both due to the fact they slightly glow, even in the darkest regions of the ocean, but also because they absorb heat at such a rate, one can easily follow any sufficiently cold current and eventually find a cluster of these skinny-capped mushrooms. Work best when ground to a fine powder before ingesting, but suckling the mushroom cap can provide the effects of water breathing for short periods of time. With a in parentheses side note, tongue will likely stick to the mushroom and be near impossible to remove without losing the effective part of the tongue. So it's do not make a joke about sucking a witch's nip if you are not willing to lose your tongue. Which is part of the reason I named it the witch's nip. Because I just thought it'd be fucking hilarious. Now have fun with your world lore, just a little bit. Let's see, and then Fire Mushy, who looks kind of got Joker vibes. You know, eyes looking like they will absolutely kill you for the fun of it. Have multiple pupils in there, and it kind of looks. I look at it like it's been cut away, like a jack-o'-lantern. This mushroom referred to as the scornful gaze, growing amongst the cracks of volcanic rocks such as obsidian. Rumors and theories abound that they grow from the former bones of the large fire titan. The name has been stricken from history, but created pretty much the earthy continents that adrift in the plains of fire. And they are remarkable for the fact that most plants in the plane of fire survive because they're either pure magic or at least partially made of fire themselves. These things, not. They're just pure plants. They have basic nature spirits in them. See, that's weird. Streamlabs never tossed a sender side in there, but you know, it does then. 13 years, 17? Oh, Dead Dakota. Okay, I missed the part where Barango spoke about Kahadas. That threw me for a loop. It's like, what? What did I say about years? Yeah, very fancy Tekakata. Yeah. Fire ones, like I said, they're a bit more basic. I've done like implied things with their use in potions. Let's see. This one, here it is. This one, it kind of gets juiced, sort of. Like you have to be very careful with actually protecting your hands because it's like very fast acting acid. The only way to recover from burns if you let their drips actually touch your skin is via healing magic. Potions won't do it fast enough. Natural remedies won't. You have to have magic to heal, or you lose all the muscle to the bone. Fungi are closer to mammalia plants, if you recall. Well, yeah, but I mean, existing in a plane of fire, it's much stranger for it to not be an animal at all. Just plant. It's like, how is it so fire resistant? Well, because fuck science. This is magic plane. Let's see. The other ones, and they emit no light, yet their ashy black outside is cracks revealing what looks like flowing magma, with a purple glittering sheen to it. You know, it's supposed to be just absolutely cool in comparison to the not air mush, the water mushes just being useful but also dangerous if you're trying to be funny with it. Oh, thank you for the lurk, Barango. Let's see, air mushy here with their kind of manic look, and the earth one is kind of look like dull and slow. Those came about from giving the description to this guy when I commissioned them. Because the air one is known as the Sylphin Manias. Hope that timer didn't come through. But yeah, the Sylphin Manias, and its main use is to either cure or induce mania, insomnia, potent nightmares. It is a bit more, let's see, a bit more likely to be used by rogues amongst these four. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, that's as good an idea as any for a fun stream. Making stuff on there. Yeah, it's a could be used as antidote, poison, however you decide to prepare it. This guy thought it's like because the whole see what was it was because mental illnesses could be induced with it, kind of making this straitjacket material looking thing around the face, kind of silhouette that's kind of restricted and thinner. Fair enough, fair enough. Do what you need to with Ben Befrango. Meanwhile, the Earth one is my favorite. They're known as the Amazonian chocolate truffles. They found the plane of Earth, or deep in the in deep caves devoid of any moisture, but also a little heat. Um, Most commonly in like tectonic plates shortly after a major earthquake. And this one I went into detail of what happens when you prepare them in a potion, because the mushrooms themselves look crunchy, but crumble quite easily, similar to a hardened clump of sand, and just as gritty in the resulting potion of it. And despite the name, it does not taste like chocolate. It has a similar bitter flavor. These things are called Amazonian truffles because you cannot melt them. You can go to the temperature of like straight up steel would melt. Nothing. They don't burn, they just exist. And adding them to potions can help fortify one's defense or physical power. Another reason to kind of build into it, and especially the third use. Surprisingly enough, in smithing weapons and armor, you can make a sort of alloy of a few other metals that are secret to the most skilled masters of the trade, at least when using these mushrooms. You can forge a second shape to a weapon. So you could have something go from dagger to halberd or to spear. Just a little bit of right touch of magic. Oh yeah, even at the temperatures to boil tungsten, this thing will not melt or burn. Though surprisingly, it cannot create any kind of fire-resistant potions. I mean, but with these mushrooms, yeah, this is just the representation of the spirit. If something like a druid were to speak to the plants, because I thought it's a lot more interesting to have a little elemental spirit fairy kind of thing instead of just a picture of a mushroom, you know? Yeah, I mean, weapons that turn into other weapons is kind of a fun trope. One of the reasons I had fun making a mushroom be involved with it, because who's going to expect that? First person who figured it out was crazy or super gifted. Yeah, those would be the four that I actually have images for, but in my opinion, are the less interesting. See, these two I do know I have the text on them. First, the Midwives' Confidence, the Dark Elemental one, and which caused a few problems in my first campaign with my current group. Shapeshift weapon 3.5, change with each attack. Oof. It's an axe, to a spear, to a sword. It's like just gotta prepare, gotta stay on your toes, man, or you're just another nameless henchman to die. Yeah, like I said, it's like I wanted a way for like all of these are supposed to help and not encourage, inspire players to try things experimentally. Or just fun lore for it's like how they're able to make a potion. It's like, oh, you got a good deal on this cool mushroom thing. Yeah, these dark elemental mushrooms are only available in naturally lightless realms such as the Abyss. And they are so dark because they absorb 100% of the visible light. They look like a void. Even if you held it up, say, against the night sky, a bunch of stars, maybe a little bit of the view of the Milky Way, you'll have a mushroom-shaped void wherever you put it. This was invented. This mushroom was mostly invented because I thought that'd be such a cool, not quite mechanic, but just the way a plant, creature, however you want to define fungi, to exist. Just all available, like every single bit. Because I'd like to see what players think to try to munchkin with that ability. And the way it grows is it absorbs all negative thoughts. If someone has massive anxiety or is under the effect of something like a fear spell, this thing will kind of leech that effect away so that it can fully mature. For that reason, midwife's confidence does not grow easily in lab conditions. It's taxing to put people through that, not because of the actual mental effects. I mean, these mushrooms are so effective they don't even feel them, which is the problem. They don't have fear, even the slightest bit of fear. Someone is just mildly uncomfortable with spiders normally, in the presence of these things, they're like, I'll just squish it. Which is a problem, because in those moments where they don't consider holding back, don't consider fear, it's a lot easier to make mistakes, to not wear your PPE, your protective equipment that keeps you from, say, accidentally cutting yourself when using equipment in like a wood shop, or not properly masking up while working on experiments in a lab, which is the real danger of these things. Just not taking the precautions you should. But it has more mundane uses, like its namesake. Just midwives using it to help dull the pain and anxiety of a woman in childbirth. Going hours upon hours trying to get through the effort. It helps calm people down. It also tastes like a stew of fatty meats when eaten raw. Eating these mushrooms raw, however, is heavily suggested against. A single 25-gram quote unquote serving, split evenly between 3 average sized adult humans, will kill all 3. It is so nutrient rich that it is hard to digest, and it is a net loss of energy per minute because your body just can't pick apart the individual nutrients to the point where the body can use it. It's like how some poisons in real life kind of quote unquote target the liver, when it's really just a case of the liver can't properly break it down into a way the body can safely get rid of it, at least not fast enough, and it just kind of overpowers that function of the body. Adds a little bit of a danger. Despite the high risk, high reward, its use in potion can cause a recipe that normally only creates a single potion into a batch of 5. High risk, high reward. Be careful how you prepare it. And at this point, some of you might be noticing I don't have any hard rules about how to prepare such a thing in your campaigns. Well, for one, that is so it is system neutral. You as a DM can decide whatever it is the players will need to figure out how to do. Or you can just leave it as bland as just make this nature roll, or equivalent, depending on your system. And you can figure out how to properly prepare this. And then another one while preparing to make sure you do that correctly, or something. Now here's where it became a big problem in the campaign. Prepared incorrectly, these spores continue to drain the mind of the potion consumer, making them less intelligent for as many as 6 weeks. This occurred with the party wizard. And it's not because he's going out of his way to look for it. He made a deal with a deity that doesn't really like people. He doesn't like sentient beings. He's okay with beasts, but he's just not fond of those who create and have enough free will and consciousness to be cruel. So he said, I'll do this thing for you, give you information. But you're gonna have to eat these. And oh boy, it was an interesting time because it was only a few weeks away from the final battle. They knew it was happening, it was prophesized at that time. But he had to do it. It's very fun times. Yeah, with a midwife's confidence, I can go back up and see Brazen's comment. Let's see. Now you want to concoct a mushroom inspired by Chernobyl? Weird fungus that absorbs radiation. Extremely poisonous to ingest, and people harvesting it tend to die horrible deaths without obvious external causes. It has some weird uses for powering artificer type devices. That is wonderful. And a suggestion, just because weird science thing. I can't remember what type of decay. I think it's beta decay. Can literally turn lead shielding in nuclear reactors to gold. And it's fucking cursed gold because it's radioactive too. But it could look like that, and gold has uses in electronics. So it might be some science to look into if you want to help lean onto the actual science uses of gold. And why people are like, oh, we gotta risk it. It looks like gold. People want it. Let's see. Ringo, the part with Hansel and Gretel make an army of cloned super soldiers. Saying she won't. Okay, is there context that I missed earlier? Let's see. Once Upon a Time, Space by the. Okay, so a song by the Mechanisms. Got it. I'm not familiar with that. I might have heard it and just don't remember the lyrics because I'm stupid like that. But yeah, that does sound interesting. Very out there for just out of context Hansel and Gretel with cloned super soldier army. It's like, wait, what? King Cole's reply is basically, what? No, pain and fear is vital for survival. Sure, she knows pain and fear and she will be able to fight through it. Yeah, I will do my best to remember that. Let's. I hope this doesn't hurt my computer. Let's see. This one was that. This Once Upon a Time in Space. Time and space, yep. Okay, mark for later. Nope, right. Thank you, Streamlabs. Reminder to sit. Okay. And then the final mushroom, which goes by two names. There's either the Lighted Crown or the Blighted. Similar to the Void Darkness mushroom, was the Midwife's Confidence. This also plays around with light mechanically. While they seem to glow, they do not actually create light. Area around a lighted crown is dimmer starting at 20 feet away because it absorbs the light from the surroundings. And the way this works mechanically is it's effectively a torch for the people who are immediately next to it, but at a far distance, people can't see the light. They can't pinpoint you and go, hey, we need to investigate that. Which makes it very desired by adventurers, especially those going into the cavernous Underdark paths. Which is one of these things I made because I thought the Underdark needs more of a draw than just existing. For one, I took an inspiration, I think it's from the Tumblr user I'll be using in a little bit, Daily Adventure Prompts, because he's done a lot of kind of rewriting shitty, trope-y D&D lore settings. So it's just connected to every plane. It's kind of like the walking paths in between, in much the way that the Spelljammer setting has outer space to travel between. It's just two different methods. Let's see, Brazen. Fun little world building detail you came up with. Our boot helmets are by far the most popular due to the widespread helm horror. Not mentioning why helmet horror is so much more widespread as a problem in the setting. And that's one sec. Let me open up a different window. Let's see. Oh, gotta spell horror correctly, or I'm gonna get the wrong images. Ooh, yep. I I think I can see a couple reasons why, and it would be hilarious. Perfect helmet. Yeah, yeah. I don't have the right reason. I think it's very close. I will not be talking about it on stream in case you're keeping it on the DL for particular reasons involving players. Let's see, where was I? Right, the two things I did with the Underdark has connecting to all the other planes, like daily adventure prompts on Tumblr, as suggested is rewriting an entire plane. Also, the other change I've made is Undercommon is a sign language. That is a choice because if this is a realm where a lot of creatures don't have sighted vision, they have tremor sense, they have blind sense, they have extremely good hearing or smell. Why would you have a language that requires like actually making sound? You would develop your own dark vision or magic items to give dark vision, and you would sign it. A sign that has very limited like hand, snap, or any kind of noises, and probably not too many with like fingers near each other, just separate. More just how your two hands interact to communicate. Which, I mean, for one, it adds a base language that helps with anyone being sneaky, a good reason for a party to learn this special language. I've even had some merchants who both communicate in Undercommon Sign as well as speaking in Normal Common, so they can communicate with a much larger audience, much larger consumer base. And I guess what these changes boil down to, and these uses of the mushrooms, are adding little things to your setting are more important than adding big things. Well, let's see, Drow Sign Language is a thing for subtle. Yeah, exactly. You communicate quickly, and even for those intelligent enough to do it, two different conversations at the same sign. Sorry, same time, not side. Just communicating sign with one ally and speaking verbally to another. It adds more possibilities to role playing as well. Yeah, like I was saying, in settings, the big things are not the most important. There are a bunch of settings with kings, with mercantile uh, city states at war with each other. There are all kinds of modern settings and space settings. To really differentiate your own creations with anything else is going to come down to these small details. I mean, heck, this mushroom is a torch that's not visible beyond 20 feet. And let's see, where is the detail? Because I know, like down here at the bottom, enough growing in one spot can slowly kill a 2 foot wide tree over the course of a week, turning it as hard as steel but 5 times as heavy, with the disclaimer that it is unusable for weapons and armor, though it has uses in architecture. That means while players can actually use this to, turn a tree into ironwood or whatever you want to call it, they wouldn't be able to use it except for RP. No weapons, no armor, but creating homes or defenses. It adds more possibility, more options to non-combat. In 5e especially, there aren't a lot of great mechanics to help players out with RP scenarios. There are plenty for combat. I mean, everyone knows some of their favorite features for getting through combat, like multi attack and action surge with fighters, or their favorite spells and their favorite caster class. So things that add more ways to do things without resorting to initiative, combat, and poisons, and whoever has the best weapons is really the thing that your players will need the most because it's your setting. They're not going to know everything that's in your head, and even if you try with like a PDF of everything, those can make it harder because it's just so much information to take in. Oh, thank you. Let's see. Combat. Your Tumblr thinks the most unhinged quote. Not today, Durango. Just because I have no idea how long this stream is going to go. Just my meandering thoughts between various tips and advice for setting setups. I appreciate it. Let's see, where was I? It's the little stuff introduced incrementally throughout the campaign. Let your players make notes on it, use it when they have an interesting idea. Uh, right here, because the whole absorbing maximum light, there are two uses. Fully exposing a. Oh, come on, actually highlight. Come on. Fully exposing a lighted crown mushroom cap to full sunlight makes it plump up and within a minute reach maximum light capacity, after which it can be used as a flashbang. Imagine having a pouch just for these things. So mid combat, take out one mushroom cap, throw it at the enemy, mid daylight, and then boom, instant escape plan. We're in potions. Easter win. Tone boiled into. Here it is. Uncommon side effect of turning the user's eyes permanently bright yellow, or even less common, to glow in the dark for an hour. It's like one use of just giving dark vision that doesn't need a spell or a feature or even a specific class. Two, a physical change that is just for flavor but marks them permanently. It's like I said, it's the small details that make a setting your own. Yeah, from there, where do I want to go from there? Actually, there is one other way to do that when you are transferring setting details between systems. Actually, let me move it right here just because my PNG is kind of covering it up. It is there. Oh, a little easier to see, even though it's covering chat, but I'll move that back in a bit. So I'm currently doing a Rise of the Runelords campaign, a originally Pathfinder. What is it? Campaign route? Adventure path, that's what they call them. But one of the big mechanics that kind of make the setting its own. See, this would have been Pathfinder 1. I'm sure they've updated for 2, but I got this the anniversary edition for the release, like the physical book, because it's got so much more maps and info. But one of the things you can do in Pathfinder as a wizard is you can choose one school of magic you don't use to make your main one stronger in some way. I'm blanking on how it exactly works. I never got a chance to actually play as much as I tried. Eventually went to 5e instead, but my first Pathfinder was the Rise of the Runelords setting, and when I did my own campaign, it's like, okay, I'm gonna convert this over because I want to see how the story goes. The one mechanics, a Pathfinder is wizards can specialize in one, but sacrifice another. Rise of the Runelord, you can go one step further and sacrifice two. The only exception being divination, because the namesake Runelords don't much care for it, or they thought is just like general everything, not important for its own. And I've kind of built on that. I've got like actual lore names for what the Runelords called these separate spellcasters, like the Envy, which is the sin associated with abjuration magic, are called the Spell Swallowers because they can dispel, they can counterspell, they can make bigger defenses. Wrath is the Berserkers because full on attack magic. And the way you have to actually use them is the example of the Spell Swallowers, which I believe my Warlock took the route of. You have to give up evocation magic and necromancy, which in one sense is direct attacking and one of the more common methods of getting minions, however temporary, in the form of undead. Let's see, the ones that give up conjuration are the evokers, the berserkers, as well as the pride patient are the illusion. So pretty much you can't mix your illusions and summoning creatures. That's how they all work. I also made a special additional one for divination. And it's effectively meant just for NPCs. because they can only use divination. They lose everything else. But because I allow these specialties chosen by any spellcaster, not just wizards, it also gives them a portent die, which means if they're not divination wizard, they can get one for free, which has some possibilities. But like I said, my players are not going to choose it. And I don't think most players would, because I, I don't think there's any divination combat spells. Maybe some buffs, but it's mostly just getting information. Yeah, and then I've got the lore stuff, and this just helps me focus on, yeah, like True Strike, but that cantrip itself doesn't do damage. It just makes it easier. Like I said, it's a bit more of a support type spell, and that's only for you. Yeah, and then GM notes, which, I mean, at this point, excuse me, my players know enough that it's not worth keeping this information because it's just fluff. It's just the story flavor. And it's just the description if they did any arcana checks on it. Like Pride and Illusion is known are deadly trap makers. They're the ones responsible for preparing ambushes or sneaking entire platoons around on the battlefield. Oh, got a scoot? Yeah, no problem, Brazen. I'll see you around. And they each have quote unquote spell points, pretty much equal to their was it proficiency bonus, which they can just cast spells for free connected to the school of magic that they chose. When they do so, they get a free meta magic. So Envy's Adjuration gets extended meta magic, where anything you can cast, I can cast better. Or Wrath being kind of phrase being cold weak as they have empowered meta magic. Or Greed, their kind of catchphrase is maximize profit no matter the expense. An employee is just another material used to profit from. And these are the kind of details that just help me get in the mindset of what each of these kind of subgroups is like. A very small detail in the sense that your players will probably never actually see those details. It's just the fluff you hand out when they do good arcana rolls or do some research on their enemy. Like I said, the smaller details end up being the ones that make your setting more unique. Get that map back over because it's no longer important for showing off that very wide handout. Yeah, so other ideas for people who are trying to build a setting to make it more their own. There are a few different ways, and I'm going to start with this handout called Why Was X Invented? And this is directly from a post which was actually not Daily Adventure Prompts, it was someone else. And it's much longer than this. I took the more important parts, so I don't have to jump around. I'll go ahead and put the link in chat in case anyone wants to read the full thing themselves. Let's just the point of view of the original poster. Casually asks, who domesticated grain in your fantasy world? But while ripping off her shirt with a WWE stage and a roaring crowd just behind and slightly to the left. So the thing about this is that the grain is a metaphor. Like, the grain is very much a metaphor. Hey, Goldfish, welcome, welcome. Yeah, we are actually just starting on... Oh shit, who was the person who did this? Not Sun Dark, Earl Grey Tay on Tumblr, on kind of the different types of world building methods. Yeah. So the question of who domesticated grain in your world, and it's a metaphor. It's very much a metaphor. I don't need a fantasy author to look me in the eye and say it was a guy named Tim. But the everything around food usually forms an enormous part of society's structure and culture. What are your fantasy world kingdom culture's food sources? What internal myths do they have around the production of food? What customs? How do people share meals? What's the etiquette? What are the differences between regions, ethnic groups, or social classes? Like, there's another Tumblr chain. It's a big meme, comes around every so often. Like every culture has its own fried food. It has its own version of a dumpling, something you can eat while walking, stuff like that. And that's what it means here with like what the difference between regions, cultures, and whatnot. It's like how is the same food used in different ways? And it's not about actually having those details. It's about how you use those details to show how different cultures are both the same and different in even the most minor of ways. It's like if every country in the world has corn, but they prepare it in different ways, like some grill it over an open fire, others boil it, that kind of hints at the way that they prepare food as a whole, like the kind of methods they prefer, or the time they have to actually prepare it. And other questions around just the food stuff. Who spends their time making meals? How much time is it? How many people can the food sources you create support? And an author doesn't have to info dump all this in the first chapter. There's a hell of a difference between a small agrarian village with one bad harvest away from starvation and Picard in Star Trek saying Earl Grey hot. Levels of scarcity help define how society works, how advanced it has come, now prepared it is for those crises. I'm gonna take another sip. Another point, one of my favorite authors up there with Neil Gaiman, Ursula Le Guin in terms of world building prep. Terry Pratchett once read an interesting fact about clowns and eggs and decided to make that everyone's problem. He famously read constantly, always looking for interesting things to put in his books, and in some cases build his plots around. Your writing would benefit from the same mentality. Now, first, the context on the clowns and eggs. For anyone who's not familiar with clown culture, to become a professional clown, you have to have an egg. And you send it to the clown archives an egg painted up with the same face paint you yourself would bear. And that's pretty much your patent on the design. No other clown can use it, or they open themselves to be sued. There's even an egg museum, I think, that shows off some of the more famous eggs of world-renowned clowns. Like the trope of Bozo the Clown, like they have an egg. And I'm sure they protect it as much as they can because that's history. And in this City Watch book, the presence of a egg museum of the town's clowns was actually a clincher for the case going on at the time. I'm not going to say which book. I'm going to say why it was important because like I said, it's a very important fact. But he just saw this one interesting fact and built a story around it. That's why your writing would benefit from reading as many different books and stories and weird things, finding something interesting and making something from it. I've said it before, plenty of people said it before. There's no such thing as an original idea, but there are original uses, original presentations of the same idea. The hero story is applicable to so many tales throughout time, across the world. And while at the base it is a hero going through this process of finding themselves and coming out the winner, or even how they fail and have to try again till they succeed or die, I mean, that's not the important part of the story. It's the details of how they do it. And then going on, this Tumblr author, the reader doesn't need an entire encyclopedia thrown at them, but you should put thought into your setting, how it interacts with your culture, history, and society. If you don't, or even worse, if you aren't sure how all of these interact, then it doesn't matter how interesting you make your characters or plots. Readers will identify situations in your story where the characters and plot are in conflict with the setting you didn't pay attention to. It's not that you need to fill out a 100-page questionnaire in your world building. It's that your intellectual curiosity and eagerness to explore how things work will enrich your story for the reader. And I don't have it here, but one of the things they remarked upon is George R. R. Martin's books and how there is a multi-year winter, and how, in terms of setting lore, that doesn't make sense. Like, who's growing food? There's, like, the nature of winter is that it's very hard to grow crops en masse, and if you can't grow crops, it's really hard to feed your cattle, your sheep, your goats, and get all the meat you need. And it's a bit of world building that, for some readers, takes them out of the setting. And if he had a couple throwaway lines of somehow them getting around this, of working to make plants that can grow even in the dead of winter in feet of snow, those readers would have been, I mean, better with it. A little distracted. It's like, that's strange. That's not an important part of the political power, the power struggle. Uh, but for those who don't notice it, it means nothing. That's still a portion of the audience loss on something you could fix with a sentence or two. But it's not his strength. He is admittedly great with, well, the political struggle I talked about, how so underhandedness, backstabbing, what have you, affect each other. So, I mean, actual political struggle, it's not like everyone knows what everyone is doing. They're going to try, but they don't. And so his stories focus on that. But it's because he's able to put all that work into the politics, he can still have a huge consumer base, has a huge group of readers who are interested in how the story continues. If you're able to do that for any compelling part of your setting, it helps bring people in. Don't give them reasons to step back and go, okay, why is the setting like this? Give them reasons to go, okay, I want to know more about this interesting fact, because it sounds like you have a plan. An example of how to get around this if you don't feel you're, say, as smart as George R. R. Martin with creating those plots is setting up forms of recursion, like questions that can be answered in a way that adds more questions. And I'm going to be paraphrasing because I could not find the Tumblr post when I was looking for it the last couple days. So first, there we go. But simple setting information. Why don't vampires travel in the sewers of this city? Well, they don't travel in the sewers because there are giant crocodiles down there. Which begs the question, why are there giant crocodiles in the sewers? Well, there's these nuns connected to a nature goddess who feed them because, it's their deity's favorite animal. It's like, okay, but why do they feed the crocodiles, though? It's like, favorite animal or not, it's like, they could just take them out of the sewers, right? Well, they feed the crocodiles to ensure vampires can't use the sewers. You see how that goes? The recursion of questions being brought up by the answer of the last question creates the illusion of more depth. Even if you just made that up on the spot, if you just improv and yes-anded with your players. It's like there are so many facts in my setting that are built on yes-anding with my players. Actually, this is probably not the best place for it. Do here. These maps, which in my setting, this is one of the few maps I have for the hotel they stayed in, a town called Dry Gulch. Dry Gulch, I believe. I'm gonna have to bring up the GIMP files. Where is it? No. Did I not actually make it? Oh, wait. No, that's because it's one of these images, isn't it? Oh, wrong thing. Right, one sec. Need to first get the correct image before I make it visible. Here's Dry Gulch. Ha. So to start with, we're gonna first make that visible and move it up a little. This is another weird idea that I got from Tumblr. He goes, "Oh, hey," she said, "it's a really touristy area, but since you're going to be passing through anyway, you might as well stop at Pier 29, see the dragons. Also, there's a. Oh, hold on. I knew your city had mountains, but dragons? Actual living dragons? Dude, it's not a big deal. They're there all the time. Of course, they're majestic and everything, but they're loud and cranky. Mostly, they lie around eating garbage. Now and then, the city council will ask. Sorry, we'll talk about trying to make them roost somewhere else, but dragons. You live in a city that has dragons. No, no, it's cool. We used to go see them when I was a little kid. It's worth doing, but the whole area is mostly dragon gift shops and commercialization is kind of a bummer. Also, sometimes dragon will melt someone's car, and it's a whole problem. Fairy tale style, giant, scaly, fire breathing dragons. Honestly, I forget the other cities don't have them. There's a few other sites on the west coast where they gather. Portland calls them wyverns, but that's a Portland thing. And it's just this kind of short story of just dragons that are as common as just like seals down in the port of was it Santa Barbara? I think in California. Like people do tourist thing, go see them, give them food, which is a stupid idea. Don't feed wild animals. You know, fuck them up. Either feeding them something that makes them sick, or make them go. It's like why bother hunting when I can just, you know, get food for free. But anyway, I digress. Dry Gulch is built around this idea that there's just a bunch of fucking dragons there, as common as pigeons, and people don't fuck with the dragons, despite the rarity of materials you could get from them. For one, they're all baby dragons, like the size of a corgi, maybe like a German Shepherd. It's like they're not huge. But also, there's one dragon who's known as Little Devil. He's the size of 5e terms, an ancient dragon. He's huge. Who is the caretaker of all the little ones. Anyone who so much as tries to touch a baby dragon without their permission gets 8. And this hotel in Dry Gulch is pretty much just there for all the people who are like doing dark underworld business. Because like you can't mess with the dragons, or Big Daddy Dragon gets upset. Which means governments are hesitant to do any official town stuff there. Hope I'm on the wrong layer to mess with the stuff. Yeah. Here I've got like basic ground floor, a pool that's been drained, so the dragons don't just sleep in there all day. Got the various other floors going back and forth. The elevators here, and all the various rooms. Pretty much that setup. But the thing about it is in the middle of Eurasia. It's like on the border between some of the more rural parts of Russia and China. It's hard to get out there, and like I said, it's mostly ruled by underworld types. And it's got this new river of lava kind of as a secondary boundary around it, helps keep it warm, and it's why the dragons are there. It's like all of this was just the idea. It's like, hey, what area would be funny to have dragons just as common as fucking pigeons? And most of the other details just kind of built up from players asking, hey, since these are underworld types, what groups are there? I thought, well, I placed it middle of Russia and China, just on the border, so it's kind of even more politically hazardous. No clear, quote unquote, owner of the area. And I went, I mean, there's the Triad, and there's Russian Mafia. So there we go. Those are the two groups. Why do they work together? How do they survive? Well, what is one of the few things I know about Russia? They have training areas for military operations, just big shelves of buildings falling apart. I'll say society built up around one of those. Fix up buildings so they're fully enclosed, safe from both the elements and the dragons. And as for heat, well, I mean, this lava river appeared with the massive setting wide event of magic and monsters coming back. So, fuck it, geothermal energy. And just kind of going back and forth, they have questions that I didn't have answers for, that I yes and didn't figure it out to build it onto it. And I have ways of buying time. It's like, that's an interesting thought. Well, Your character wouldn't necessarily know it. So roll just charisma check, see if you can't talk someone into sharing the information. Or an intelligence skill check for looking up in the library or something. That just buys time as a DM to figure out a good improv answer then. Like I said with the sewer gators, give an answer that just raises more questions. Like earlier I said, there's Triad, Russian Mafia. Why do they work together? Well, I mean, neither government can really claim it without risking war, so they just handshake deal, come together. It's like, well, we're both kind of safe here for the time being, and we're willing to work together if the hammer comes down one way or the other. Which raises questions: what deals have they made to ensure that? Do they have separate deals with Dragon? And I have answers to both of those. Just figure out ways to answer questions that get you more, well, questions to be asked. Eventually, your players will just assume you have everything built, and secretly, you didn't have shit. It's the big skill it takes time to build as a DM. I have it because I've been doing this for 14, 15 years across 4 systems, and I've done it with close friends and my siblings, and you pick up a way to just bullshit, and you build on it, and uh, you have real fun. So from here, I've got 2 other directions I can go. Talk about how to integrate players and important characters into the lore, or how to what was the other term? How to integrate homebrew into your setting. Does anyone have any preferences they want to just shout out and say, yeah, let's do this one over the other? I think for this, we'll go for the slightly calmer. I'll go back to the tavern. Let's see that. Okay, I'll give 3, 2. Okay, with no shoutouts going, I'll go ahead and start with how to do with the homebrew. Then we'll kind of go down to characters themselves. So, for examples, I've got the wonderful Bracca's, just the integrating her homebrew subclasses into settings. She, for a lot of them that I've seen at least, talks about how to get them into established settings like Ravenloft and Eberron, which are 2 examples I used for 2 of them. But we're starting with the Bardic College of Dragonsong. She does not have that set up. She does have enough to give hints on how to integrate it with whatever setting. So, quick spiel: College of Dragonsong, as the name suggests, is a bard that is able to use draconic style magic and playing around with the different elements that the dragons come in. Due to the nature of their mentors and the magic at their command, bards of this college are often regarded with a mix of awe and fear. This apprehension is not without merit, however, as not all Dragonsong bards are benevolent. Villainous bards of this college can often be found among the cult of Tiamat, raiding towns and villages to plunder riches and inspire fear. Yet heroic bards of this college use their magic to inspire heroes and empower those who take up arms against such evils, and often act as ambassadors in hopes of fostering peaceful relations between humans and benevolent dragons. Already 3 examples there. Directly evil Cult of Tiamat, a draconic. What is she in 5e lore? I think she's a archfiend of sorts. Or being good, directly connect to heroes, or at least combat, because bards are all about buffing, at least inspiring. And then the third option of working as ambassadors between draconic beings and countries. The way you use those in your setting as a DM can make it easier to bring in backstory, bring in side quests or opportunities to the party that have a bardic College of Dragonsong character. And then there's the Conclave of the Veil Strider, not quite so hint in the name, but majority of their features revolve around the special invisibility they're able to create, sort of a dome. And for these, I chose Ravenloft and Eberron because they're some of the more interesting to me, as well as being settings a lot of people don't know personally. Like they know from stories, but they haven't necessarily played the campaigns. So Ravenloft with Straw, dark vampire, fiction. Indeed, few Vale Striders that walk the lands of Ravenloft are trained in the art of summoning the Vale. Instead are travelers that had been led into or stumbled through the mists and emerge changed by the dark power's hazy borders. Those who regularly travel the mists, such as the Keepers of the Feather, the Church of Ezra, and the Vistani, often manifest these abilities, and those who do go on to mentor others with such gifts. Name dropped established groups in this setting: Keepers of the Feather, Church of Ezra, and the Vistani. Ravenloft being the kind of domain of dread most known, kind of like a not parody, referencing Dracula. But there's also it's not Ravenloft's Guide. It's the something guide to Barovia. I'm blanking on the NPC name, which talks about the various domains of dread. I know there's a space one. I know there's a carnival one. There should be one that references Frankenstein. All these things have in common is the mists that kind of trap people inside them or trick them into these other planes. And with that, she's introduced a way for the Vale Strider subclass to be connected to the setting itself. And then with Eberron, the kind of steampunky setting. The continent of Corvair is a land wrought with intrigue, mystery, and adventure. With the dragon-marked houses, each scheming behind closed doors, individuals with a talent for subterfuge are never without work. The elves of both House Fjarlan and House Thurani, in particular, employ a number of Vale Striders for covert operations, though they can also expect to serve as stagehands for a grand performance. Again, name-dropping established groups within the setting, in a way that makes it easy to bring this homebrew into that setting. It doesn't change any of the major history, but gives them a natural place. The Oath of the Blood King is a paladin oath that kind of has the flair and flavor of a warlock pact, because rather than swearing to a set of ideals, you're swearing an oath, a pact to a vampire lord. Back to the Ravenloft, in contrast with this Vale Strider one, Blood Kings be found in several of the domains of dread. In Barovia, there's Strahd, and the cadre of vampire lords that attend him. In Darkon, they are mainly comprised of Dampier members of the Kargatane, and in Ikath, they are granted powers by Xiang? It's been too long since I've practiced those languages. Assuming that I'm just too fucking white to pronounce that correctly, work in tandem with Jiangxi forces, which are a different form of a vampire from China, I believe. Let's see. I think Toho has one. They've got a kind of piece of paper on their forehead and a special hat that I've only really seen on the Jiangxi style of vampire. It's pretty much, it's, again, established groups, established names. You should easily be able to do it with any good homebrew. And if you can't, you need to ask some questions about what the important quality of that homebrew is. Another example that's not a Brock related, in fact a barbarian thing, but wrap up with this other Eberron thing for closing out the handout. And again, on the continent of Corvair, the main continent of Eberron, and throughout the world, the Oath of the Blood King is synonymous with the Blood of Vol faith. Seen as a position of honor within the organization, a swearing of the oath is often overseen by a vampire of high standing within the clergy, who ritualistically bites the paladin to mark them as their champion, not converting them, but giving them the vampiric style powers that this paladin pact creates. She didn't have to create specialized lore for any of them. She just pointed out here are the ones that make more sense, little details of how you can use it, and it's the little details make the setting. Especially, they make the setting your own. On that note, for this barbarian subclass, I actually have to go into GIMP. Here it is. Oh, wrong one. The Barbarian Path of the Working Man. Which we'll go over the whole thing for people that are interested in this, especially with the Ghibli storyboard photo here of Castle in the Sky, if I recall correctly. Although many myths and stories picture heroes of epic proportions, many of the folks that these legendary adventurers might pass by in the packed market square or bustling dockyards are heroes in their own right, providing for the families and moving the world forward one bag of flour or barrel of mead at a time. This Path of Barbarian subclass aims to epitomize those heroes. Victors of the bar brawls, the leaders of the stockyard crews, the champions of the common man. The fine detail of Rage Without Hatred, going on how, despite it being called a barbarian rage in 5e, it does not have to be sourced in anger. It can be in a sheer willpower, determination, or throwback to a Larry the Cable Guy, get her done attitude, without a drop of malice in the character's heart, which is not something a lot of barbarian subclasses focus on. Other ways to draw on that power. But in the form of the Path of the Working Man, Reddit user David375 has done very well to kind of lean onto this lore, this backstory of the subclass. So actually going back up here to just the way it easily goes into the flavor of the thing. The victors of the bar bowls, leader of the stockyards crews, champions of the common man. So that's all the story you need for how this barbarian interacts, and that enough is the fact that they're low-level, local heroic types. Makes it so much easier to toss into any setting you need them. But it's not something you can rely on every subclass, every homebrew having ready for you as a DM. It's more looking through these and getting ideas of how to do it, if you didn't have that little hint up top. To start, tough stuff at level 3. Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, you can use Charisma in place of Dexterity. So, your bar brawlers being not so much dexterous as being a way to talk their way out of a conversation, out of a fight, with their natural charisma of being not sober at the worst of times. Practice Arms, the other level 3 thing, allowing you to apply the benefits of Rage and Reckless Attack to ranged attacks made with thrown weapons, which also lends into that bar brawler mentality of stones or knives. Kind of small things you can easily keep on your person without drawing attention to them. And that's just credits. The team player. Something unique to this subclass. Not many do it, especially for a barbarian. While raging, you can use the help action. It's allowing your typically stereotyped as rage fighter actually assist their team directly, not through being someone prone or killing them quicker, but a bonus action to assist. And additionally, when an ally benefits from your use of the help action, whether or not you're raging, you can use your reaction to add your charisma modifier to their roll. And then, of course, the how many times you can use per short rest. But again, this is a support subclass in a class itself that's usually all about DPS, which leads to, like this lore suggested, them being part of a team player, them being part of a crew, and how If you didn't have this hint of just local heroes well loved amongst their village, of why they'd be joining the party. It's like, you seem like an amiable chap, won't you come and assist us with fighting this dragon with your arms thicker around than a fucking watermelon? you know? Thighs like that could squish a pumpkin between them, I'm sure. Crack man's head like egg between thighs. Uh, just little details they can use to tie in until even your homebrew looks as natural as the path of the totem warrior barbarian that most people take as a given as a possibility. Let's see, common roots. Gain proficiency with 2 languages or 2 skills. Limited options, but not ones, again, you would attribute with barbarian. Make them more useful out of combat, which tends to be their weakness unless you specifically build for it. And then another kind of ribbon ability, like some backgrounds have, being able to work with commoners better, getting an advantage on those ability checks to interact with them. And finally, the foreman. You are adept at rallying others to face the most difficult of tasks and complete them with ease. Once per throat. Once per long rest, upon activating your rage, choosing a number of willing creatures equal to your charisma modifier. So long as they're within 30 feet, and you call them to your aid. For a minute, they gain any bonuses to movement speed or damage resistances that you have, as well as adding your rage damage bonus to their attacks. Additionally, you and each creature gain a number of temporary HP. It's like this is a feature that allows you to kind of boost a riot, even if it's only maximum 5 people, because barbarians don't have they only get that special bonus to strength and constitution go over the natural limit of 20. But still, they're branching out from the stereotype that's common to barbarians. They do in such way it's easier to link them to your campaigns, make them feel like they belong there, which is the most important part of anything you're bringing in. Like, so I think Goldie missed it. They're talking about George R. R. Martin, the multi-year winter, and not really elaborating on how crops are still growing despite that, how it can take some people out of it, but here's an example of the reverse of making something new, making it your own, and somehow fitting it in a way that makes it feel like no one would question. It's like, of course they'd have something like this. Of course they'd have a hometown hero like this who is well loved and supports the people around them. It's beautiful stuff, man. See, the other page is just thoughts on how to make this work in settings, which again, like Braca stuff, more people should do, if only to kind of get out of their comfort zone and think about things a bit deeper, perhaps. They made this for 2 primary reasons: because they're bored, and to make a barbarian that addresses the major flaws of the class itself, being multi-attribute dependent on redundant abilities. Strength and dexterity, both used for combat, but honestly, dex saves come up more often than strength. But strength, when it comes up, you need a lot to really fuck people up. We won't go into all of it, but let's see. Mostly being able to swap out the unarmored defense of dexterity for charisma. Let's see, personally mentally picturing Duffy and Charles from Castle in the Sky slinging it out. Where me would be, man, I'm blanking on his name, but Lieutenant Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist flexing against Asumi's husband, the butcher, and they both just flex their shirts off. It's like that. That's a lot more charisma than actual strength. This is just showing off. Let's see. Practice arms. Let's see. this was thematically appropriate. Someone who spent decades of their life throwing bags of wheat or coal so it's just right on a stack or pallet should feel just at home as throwing spears, rocks, and chairs, or whatever else you do with them, which it makes sense. Like a barbarian with a bow is probably a bit much, just because the ranges those get. But with tavern brawler feat, being able to make the most of just throwing whatever shit's at hand, really helps bring the subclass down to earth, to the realm of more mortal. I just realized I really hope I remember to actually update the Steam time. Oh well. And just stuff like that. And they've got it separated out to each of the features. I definitely recommend looking them up, giving them a read, because these are more ways to help maybe think of how to integrate homebrew into your worlds better. But yeah, with that, let's go ahead and jump back to the browser stuff. The first big SERP, because that was a lot of talk at once. Here we go. And oh, hey, we're already about an hour and a half in. Oh, man, passing the time when you're having fun. Let's see, what else have I talked about? Oh, right. So I talked about how to bring homebrew in. Now, how to make characters for all the people who are not running their own settings, but do want to have their characters kind of fit a setting more. I know some of you are probably going to hate me for having named the handout this. Making interesting characters, the Gap Moe. So the thing about interesting characters in shows like anime and cartoons is how to what is it? How to make sense of what is traditionally borderline opposites in personality. We have Vinny Santorini of the wonderful movie Atlantis: The Lost Empire. This guy is tough, he's masculine, he's the explosives technician, and yet his dream of what to do with the money when they get back from Atlantis is own a flower shop, to run it successfully. It is very, very much not a role commonly attributed to men, especially nowadays, because freaking some people are too much. Anyway, not nowadays, certainly not back when they actually made this movie. And that is the gap. The two things you wouldn't think would exist in the same man. Obsessed with explosives, but also wanting to run a business around flowers. The other opposite stuff, like this color, kind of gives the silhouette a bit more of a hunched look, but his shoulders themselves are relaxed. He's still kind of reserved, kind of introverted type silhouette with his body closed in this arm in a pocket. But beneath it all, he's also a very skinny man, and they show some hints of it, with the wrist here, neck in some of the scenes, to give you the impression that without this, he's probably a freaking twig. So it's using that character design to show that he is not quite what he seems. Hints that he's not quite as masculine as you would expect from Demolitions Expert, but he's also not pushover. Because, flower shop or not, he is an explosive expert. So reconciling the Gap Moe with characters. And I've given this advice on a Reddit thing. I think I've even talked about it on a previous Bootleg Identify. If you want to give your character depth, you need to give them qualities that you would not at first assume match their class. For instance, I believe one of the examples I've done before is having a fighter with some tendencies similar to a rogue, such as perhaps thievery or working with organized crime in the past, not as muscle, but perhaps as a fence or a fixer. So I think instead we're going to do something I haven't done. I'm going to just kind of think it through on stream. So let's see. Or one of the fun, an academic wizard. That's one of the tropes. Everyone has seen it in one form of media or another. Just the bookworm of a spellcaster, trying to research things so they can better take over or explode the world, right? So instead, let's use qualities of different spellcaster, a druid. Yeah, that's about as opposite as a wizard you can get. So why would a wizard focus on kind of the more natural side of magic? Maybe instead of just being an academic or reading through tomes, they're trying to get in contact with the more natural primal magic. Perhaps research is leading to show that all magic was more like druids, and they're trying to get back in touch with that despite all the book heavy training that wizardry tends to be nowadays. Having their goal be more of a biological nature, perhaps fixing a natural issue, maybe suspecting that a commonly thought beast is actually more of a what's the term? Behemoth? I think that's another 5e creature type. No, not behemoth. Aberration, that's what I was thinking. More of a created in a lab look than actually being a natural creature. And the fact that their pursuit of study is not directly magic, but on the biology of a creature itself, gives that depth because it's already so different than a typical wizard. Sure, it's got the aspect of study and research, but not into spells, not into history, not into a skill tied to with intellect. Nature is a wisdom skill. Or wait, no, no. Nature is intelligent. Survival, and animal handling are more wisdom. So leaning on that gives depth because like the other players will go, why does this intellectually driven class put so much weight on wisdom based skills? And it gives that illusion of depth you can build off of as a character. They can ask about what prompted this and whether you had prepared or not. You just have to answer that question in a way that raises more questions. Well, I lost family to such a thing, and perhaps another local hero slew. We'll go with a Pegasus, because Pegasus are kind of strangely. They're strange in terms of beasts from the outside, celestial origin or not. A wizard can go, it's like, fuck conventional knowledge. I want to know what's going on. It's like slicing open what's thought to be a Pegasus and having it be a bit more aberration style on the inside. Maybe the look of tainted meat. Or of what appears to be some form of rabies that unicorns should not. Sorry, unicorns or Pegasus should not be able to contract. And the pursuit of that could raise questions like, okay, well, what have you found already? Or what happened to the hero that did it? And build off with more fucked up knowledge being found. So have to certainly work with your DM to cement into the setting, to the lore. Ooh. Honestly, now I'm a little distracted because I kind of want to make this druidically studying wizard a little bit without any multiclassing. But yeah, if you take tropes of one class, connect them to the class you're actually making, finding a way to connect those two is what will give the depth your character needs. Oh, the other big example, Ashton from Critical Role. The what's the subclass called? The Chaos Variant, something like that. But his backstory sounds like something you expect on a rogue. He's part of a criminal crew. He stole shit, and one of the major things he's working with is paying back a debt because he got caught in the act. That's not a typical barbarian backstory. That is a roguish backstory. But by connecting the two, he's instantly more interesting as a character than some of the others at the beginning. Like, no fault to them. Like, they were all interesting characters, but Ashton stood out to me just for that Gap Moe. The differences and how he reconciled them together. But yeah, got that. Is anyone have any questions or topics you'd like me to move on to next while I take a couple sips and unquench my throat? Excuse me. All right, because there's nothing else. I can move on to planes themselves. How to twist them a little bit to better fit your setting. See, here we are, the macroverse, and other planar locations. Why is a spider? Well, we'll get to that in a second. This is one of the posts from Daily Adventure Prompts on Tumblr that I took inspiration from. And they have a bullet point thing of why they don't like the. Actually, is it right here? No, it's not. That's the other thing. Yeah. Why they don't like the cosmic wheel arrangement of the planes in 5e. They broke down these bullet points. I removed like two because it felt like it was just retreading the previous points. But the whole point of a cosmology is to describe the natural order / structure of the universe. The Great Wheel describes a universe that's effectively just the Christian dichotomy of heaven and hell with a few extra steps, which is very fair. It's a fundamentally moral view of how the multiverse works and makes right and wrong not only into objective facts but a geography you can walk across, traveling from the most morally correct place to the most incorrect place with just a couple of portals. And I mean, they're right. There's like 2/3 of the Great Wheel style of planar arrangement are just various ways of just good heaven like afterlives or limbos. The last third being like literal hells and places of punishment. There's no depth in a black and white morality system. If a culture is, heavily evil, what the fuck does that mean other than giving you an excuse to just say, well, it's acceptable to slay them all because they're evil? But that's probably getting ahead of their points here. Point number two they have the system is painfully rigid, not only removing any nuance over whether a course of action is correct, but preventing any competing worldviews from even existing. You can't have a differing belief system or schisms of faith, but you can go out and see proof of the rightness of the Great Wheel. And these are links to another post that get more in depth on that. But much like how D&D handles gods, this paradoxically removes the idea of faith from matters of worship, which to them removes the whole point of having gods in the first place, reducing the big questions around death into a moral assembly line with one of a select number of predetermined outputs. You are chaotic good, you go to one of the chaotic good afterlives. Lawful neutral, you go to the lawful neutral one. There's no nuance to it. And I'll talk about how I've worked around that and how it ties into the spider in a sec. It's no stretch to say that the Great Wheel is just the alignment chart, canonized as a fundamental part of the game world. While we've all grown past the fundamentally black and white morality of the alignment chart, it still mystifies them. D&D uses the Great Wheel as a piece of world building upon which most campaigns are supposed to be set. And they can't help but focus in how much the Great Wheel doubles down on the game's weird hodgepodge of colonialist belief structures, which I believe is an article we're actually going to go to, so I'll copy that link now. While Wizards of the Coast has hastily amended out the almost always chaotic evil over the past couple of years, they still set their material to a cosmology. Creatures like orcs, goblins, and gnolls are just born evil, drawn to do evil in their life, are doomed to suffer eternally in various hells because evil is in their very nature. This isn't good world building. The authors seek some kind of weird vindication of their own beliefs by creating a group of people that can feel morally justified in punishing, and we all know where that gets us. And I'm not going to go into those, because looking at the link name proper, It reminds me, they had to deal with. So the thing about daily adventure prompts as a Tumblr blog is they take suggestions or requests of what topics to cover. They don't do all of them, but they do some. It's like, hey, I've got a table and I'd like to do a casino heist. Do you have any ideas on that? And they go, yes, I have plenty of ideas on that. I actually do suggest reading it because they have some cool ideas on that. Oh yeah, indeed, Rango. Quotes Sir Terry Pratchett. People's things, that's where it starts. That's where evil starts. And it's not just the evil side that is the one that uses that methodology. It's like, well, you're nothing more than X is how you treat people as things. Thinking they cannot improve or change their own belief system. That they are just stuck in a pattern that they have no control, and if they can't control, why should you bother? Right before that, like I said, they're not quite exactly every day, but they do a lot of prompts, answer them, give suggestions. This link goes to all the ones about a specific Anon who kept trying to make suggestions that were pretty much just barely veiled suggestions of, can I get this adventure that supports the idea of fascism, that the tyrant is actually good, and the woke mob standing against them are evil? Like three different ideas boiled down to that. Good, just, noble king, and these horrible miscreants standing against them. It's like, dude, you are the problem here. And he named them just a just and kind because, well, the use of just and kind in all of the prompts made them a very, very blatant of just who was sending in anonymous requests of the same theme again and again and again. But yeah, before we go to this, the article about the hodgepodge of colonialist belief structures, how have I personally broken out the grade wheel cosmology? I don't treat it as a wheel so much as a web. I'll go ahead and bring Spider forefront to make this point clearer. So at the center of the web, there is the prime material, using 5e terms for the planes. Every branching off from that, in my setting, is a different timeline. More specifically, it's different apocalypses and post-apocalypses. For example, and I've hinted at this in my campaign, so it's no spoiler to my players unless they've forgotten, the Feywild is what happens when a nature-based apocalypse takes over the prime material. It is the reclaiming of nature after technology has been reduced to rust and ash. And the beasts come out and reclaim the land from themselves after nuclear winter has not only set in but has long since passed. The fact that the time no longer changes throughout the day, that is permanently twilight, well, it shows just how long it has taken for that step. The planet that is the Earth equivalent in this prime material is just no longer rotating, but is also so late in the cycle that the sun has started to dim. So the planet is not overheating on one side, freezing on the other. It's just not enough heat being added anymore because the sun has lost it. See, I've actually not watched Nausicaa in a while. So I'd like to ask Brango what you mean by lets you go full Nausicaa. So I understand there are some giant creatures, but I don't think they're in the movie itself. I think it's in the source manga that they Ghibli made the movie on. Toxic Jungle? Oh, so let's go full Nausicaa. You're referring to the post-nuclear winter state, I assume? Yeah, I can kind of see that. God, I should rewatch some old Ghibli. They're just so good. But yeah, like I said, Feywild is just the post apocalypse where nature reclaims it. The Archfey is just the near equivalent to demigods and deities that are still around because they aren't mortal in the same way that humanoids were. But other planes like the Shadowfell is so far beyond a different apocalypse, the sun is no longer there. It is eternal darkness and shadow, and those creatures that thrive in the darkness, such as specters and the 5e creatures called Shadow themselves, are the only ones that can really survive anymore. Let's see, the Toxic Jungle is a forest of giant. Sorry, I just went out of focus. Radiosynthetic fungi inhabited by equally giant arthropods. Ooh. The fungi bind heavy metals and other toxic knots. Oh, yeah. Yeah, arthropods do that. Into harmless forms. But that's a. Wait, except for the part where it does emit extremely toxic spores. Very fair, yeah. A good example of that could just be an alternate Earth timeline where arthropods got big, fungi did this shit with all the toxic heavy metals. Oh, but only at the edges. Yes, that's what makes it safe and sure. Yeah, other planes, the various hells. Let's see, actually, as my players. They haven't come up with it in character, but I believe I have told them about it. The way archdevils work in my setting are they're kind of the dark reflection of deities. Deities gain their power from worship and offerings, while archfiends get the same power from fear, and even more importantly, from not being known. To weaken an archfiend is to make what they do and how they operate more broadly known. Because each of their levels of hells are each of the post apocalyptic timelines where they have taken over their respective prime material and have been able to add that mass to their plane of hell. Hence why it is the counterpart to the various paradises. It is always expanding, always getting bigger, and why they are such a difficult threat to destroy outside of their plane. And it gives more nuance the supposed battle of good versus evil. Because the same thing that expands the various hells also expand the various paradises. We'll get to that in a second, Streamlabs. Every world that has successfully fought off their apocalypse through the power of goodness aligned to the respective deities of that heaven or afterlife gets absorbed into that afterlife. It's full on rapture thing that people made up for Christianity, but actually people and the land too. They get that paradise because they overcame the attempts of these various hells to take them. That's why there are just so many paradise or hell afterlives. Paradise or hell planes in comparison to the ones that are just, the Feywild or the Shadowfell or freaking Star Wars. Let's see, other planes that I have. Let's see. And this is also why my setting does not have time travel. Not in any literal sense. If you wish to travel through time, it's actually going to another alternate timeline that is close to what you're going for, in respective to your prime material. So you can't go back to 2 weeks ago. You can only travel to a plane that is the equivalent of yours 2 weeks ago. Which makes it so there's no easy fix. And anyone who successfully, quote unquote, finds a method of time travel doesn't destroy the universe by creating paradox after paradox of future knowledge coming to the past. And this also, conversely, puts more weight on divination, because that means they're not looking into your future. They're looking into another plane that looks to be in a similar course of you. They're finding the most probable answer of the various timelines before they are all combined into a single timeline. Because, I mean, we've all heard the thing about the smallest changes, a butterfly flapping its wings, creating a tornado or a hurricane in another part of the world. In my setting, those changes are correct. But there are so many changes that are just so small they don't actually change anything major. Such and such politician still gets elected no matter what you do, no matter how you vote, no matter how everyone in your district votes, and so on. So just all the ones that come out to the big, well, the smallest major change just collapsed together and became a single timeline. So there's both infinite, yet not infinite timelines, the way things work for me. Yeah, timelines branch off and are offset. So there are infinite possibilities, but who knows how long it sticks around. But yeah, which this is one of those actual big details that are not important to the story at all. No character is going to investigate that and change how the world works with it. Which reflects how, like I've said several times so far, the little changes are what's important. Because the little changes your players can actually make use of. While the big ones are just set dressing. It doesn't matter if dragons are real in your setting or not. What matters is can your players interact with draconic like materials? You figure out those, you can make the setting your own. You can make them original to you. Yeah, I think we're done with Spider there. Your setting says demons that aren't. Yeah, which I think more people need. Like, yeah, I've said it plenty of times how celestials and devils in my campaign are also two halves of the same soul. That they are punished by the primordial gods for not obeying and forcibly split and tricked into fighting each other. Keeps them too weak to rise up against their creators who punished them in the first place. Another one of those big details that mean jack fucking shit to the players. Really. But yeah, before we go to this other specific article about anti-colonialist tropes in D&D, we're gonna do some of the monster and plane reimagining that Daily Adventure Prompts is known for. Like, this is the major reason I think people should get on a Tumblr, just follow this guy. Great ideas. Let's see, Brango with your demons, they're just inhabitants of the Dreamlands. That's interesting. I think I've seen a simpler take, not for demons, but I think Daily Adventure does the devils specifically. They represent like sins and vices, and that is what affects their choices. Just trying to like trick people into going, aha, people do act like this one vice I represent. And it makes for very crazy things. But that's not the article we're on here. We're on the elemental planes. Daily adventure prompts. To put it simply, their problem with the planes is that they're just dumb. They're low grade Saturday morning cartoon level world building based on misinterpretation of medieval and Renaissance concepts. You roll up to the plane of elemental fire and you know that you're going to be fighting fire monsters with fire attacks and personalities that can be described as fiery. Quick aside, let's see where I go. There's one afterlife. It is the Dreamlands. When you die, you go there. It is infinite. But there are cities in it that you can exist in. Which, I mean, if that was the truth in real life, I could handle that. It's like, oh, everyone goes there. There's no major thing. Well, I'll continue being good. Also reincarnation. Exactly. Gotta keep souls in the cycle instead of just spontaneously creating and destroying them. Well, not destroying, moving them to the Dreamlands. Actually, it's gonna get cramped. But yeah, as with a lot of D&D's default cosmology, daily adventure prompts wants to give them depth. And so it is something that is just rigidly defined, giving them a nuance that their words the DM could prospectively useful, namely by saying all elemental spirits, the universal origin of their designated plane, rather than just being a magical part of their perspective landscape. Their idea here of river spirit as part of a mundane landscape has a thematically rich palette to draw from, touching on themes of life giving, fertility, travel, the history of a particular area, and seasonal cycles. A water elemental who's just from a plane of infinite water is, just a patch of water with opinions, despite them acting not much more than just an ooze or a slime. Their fix is they ditch elemental planes entirely. Just retcon more interesting creatures to have their origins in particularly magical areas of the material plane, or to come from specific regions of the Feywild, which has a very, very diverse nature as well. And so, going off my earlier discussion of how my setting does planes, yes, there is still an elemental plane of water, but it's a post-apocalypse akin to Waterworld. There is an internal plane of fire, and it is not so much a single constant plane, so much as one of the various other timelines that is slowly being absorbed by some layer of hell, which means there will be fiendish influence, but not everywhere, you know? And actually, before continue there, let's see, Baringo. Quote unquote demons are just people who got stuck in the dreamlands through glitchy reincarnation, decided to stay there. And of course, you can get there by sleep, which, again, better than the planes that are considered the default to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons lore. Just the implications of the dream spell. Oh, and then there's the other interplanar travel, not plane shift. I think it's called Dreams of the Blue Veil or something. 5e has, where a group of fake creatures can go to sleep and travel through planes. That works well with Barango's interpretation of the Dreamlands. The main characters are people who died and either reincarnated back or decided they didn't want to be alive again. That has nuanced implications that I could continue for a bit. Oh, and you mutate over time? Cool. It's not enough that you just want to avoid being alive again. You might have to make the choice to not go insane. Incredible. We're also here. Let's see. Alright, they reference another one of their articles about the city of brass and gin being just connected to a particularly magical area of the material plane, rather than a different plane entirely. Then adapting elements from the elemental plane to their version of the Underdark arc, which I also agree with. Because what would better represent a plane of nothing but earth, but just connecting it to a literal plane of nothing but tunnels and caves? It's like 5e really should have just combined those anyway. They didn't have to be different. And then later on they came back, added this edit, thinking about it a bit more. If you wanted an interesting explanation for why elementals exist, you'd talk about how they reverberate with the same primal energies that gods use to create the world. That particular mountain, storm, or ocean current is an echo of the gods' own brushstrokes. And that's why the element in particular has a primordial sort of life. Which is another good interpretation. Because, there are plenty of gods, even just in real life myths, who are not known as a creation god, but still invented something, some new concept or item or plant or creature, but their domain is not strictly in creation. Why wouldn't some of the power perhaps be misused to some degree? Make something by accident. Like one of the what is it? One of the stories of Medusa, when their head is being carried back, drops fall. I gotta look this up because I can't remember what. Oh, I remember. Medusa's blood hitting the ocean creates Pegasus for some reason. I'm not sure why a snake-related figure's blood, a figure who wasn't even a god themselves, was just cursed by a god, somehow created a creature that is not human or snake-shaped. It's Mr. Weird Man, but I think that's a good explanation for why something as cool and powerful as Pegasus is created by accident, secondhand from a curse that a deity did create. Uh, yeah, let's go ahead and get this other article loaded up. Talking about colonialism. First, let's see, Brango, change over time, and if that happens, you become a quote unquote true demon. Categories that include nightmares and night gaunts. Very interesting indeed. I would never want to be in your dreamlands, but it's still slightly nicer to think about than freaking whatever Christianity has going for it. There we go. Let's see. This is a response to a prompt from does it have access name here? It's Torchless Panic Attack. Torchless Panic. Yeah, well, I'm just gonna say that's the pronunciation. They send in this prompt that I don't know if this is valid, as it's not an adventure request, but DMs are closed, so it wasn't possible to check in advance. What is your position on campaigns/adventures that are very direct parallels to colonialism? Somewhat broad question, but I'm curious where you stand on the subject, especially since opposing foreign explorers use violence to extract wealth from less developed peoples is about as mainstream as D&D gets, which, but in that context, it should be clear to everyone's like, yeah, it's pretty heavily colonialism. It's like how many times in real life is something contributed to a cult as an excuse to put them down? How many people have been declared a witch so that they can be killed and their possessions and property be absorbed by the state or the church? It's a tough thing to kind of right around or against if you do not acknowledge that at some level it is in fact a problem with the system. That it is one of those tropes that a lot of writers of adventures just retread because everyone knows it and they don't think about the implications of it. And it's part of their heavy topics line of articles. As I say, they find the question interesting because for a long time, D&D was a game that was very pro-colonialism, but with the scientific racism built into the lore. Which, let's open this up another tab and just see what it's referencing in particular. Ah, yes, orcs. And the, kind of tribalism a lot of fantasy systems kind of default to. Actually, before we go into this, I do have a specific reference to said orcish tribalism's roots. A lot of people know one of the earlier interpretations of orcs comes from Lord of the Rings. I have a little screenshot here specifically from Lord of the Rings wiki, referencing the Silmarillion, actually. Let's very quickly the browser one, go to GIMP here. Referring to the First Age period, Melchior was the first to learn of the awakening of the elves. He soon began sending evil spirits amongst the elves, who planted seeds of doubt against the Valar. It is also rumored that some of the elves were being captured by a rider if they strayed too far. It was believed by the Eldar that these unfortunate elves were brought to Utumna, where they were cruelly tortured and twisted into orcs. Now let me go ahead and bring out this pen and do, let's see, bright yellow with some opacity so I can highlight here. Oh, bigger size. Little smaller size there. Good enough. Whoa, that's not opaque at all. What the fuck? God, that's even too much still. God damn it. Okay. Do that. So, The origin of orcs in Lord of the Rings were that they were once elves who were tortured into being orcs. So, the origin of orcs are innocent people who whose minds were broken and twisted. They are, like, as stated in the text, mentally ill people used as weapons of war. That's already a grim, dark origin. And also a statement that it's not even their fault. They were not born evil. They were forcibly twisted by Melchior. I'm not familiar enough with the Silmarillion. I couldn't get into reading it, but I know they're one of the big evil figures up there with like Sauron, one of the major antagonists. So the orcs, it's not even their fault. It's not even their culture. They are forced into this. There should still be some emotion having to slay them, because it's not their fault. They're effectively just slaves. It's not a happy origin. And that nuance is lost because a lot of people just said, well, everyone knows that orc is a big scary enemy from Lord of the Rings, so we're just going to copy all that, lacking the nuance that makes it a moral gray area. They said, fuck the grayness, it is a black and white issue for us instead. And that is why it falls under the trope of colonialism. They're just this quote unquote savage race that needs to be slain or forced to adapt your culture. In the real world, that has happened. And unfortunately, the First Nation tribes of North America have suffered for it. If you don't recognize the trope, you cannot avoid it. That's why it's one of the heavy topics that they go into. It is important to them, and it's important to me too. Going in depth of how they do it, knowing that the orc lore in particular is one of the things they have gone against. In fact, before I forget, I need to get this link. I'm sure at least some of you will be interested in going off their other things and seeing what they write. One sec, that is scam. So nope, not answering it. Oh, Brangle, thank you for the your lore. He is the BBG who created / influenced / was the boss of Morgoth with Sauron's. Okay. So he's the quote unquote great grandfather of evil that Sauron continued. Got it. Yeah, there is the link for this colonialism article. I hope some of you take interest because, like I said, the Adventure Prompts is very on point with stuff like this. They research their stuff, they know it. Sadly, they are starting to move away from D&D and have started taking suggestions of other systems to become their new default for creation. But all this stuff is going to stay up, and it's very good resources if you need ideas of how to make things less tropey and more your own. Sauron is the same type of entities. Yes, that is actually one of the things I do know about Lord of the Rings. They're effectively, depending on how you interpret it, and I'm going to use a Christianity metaphor for it, they're the equivalent of Jesus. Like they were sent down by the Lord of the Rings equivalent to gods, and they can come back if those same beings allow them to come back as often as they can. That's why Gandalf the Grey came back as Gandalf the White. But if Sauron dies, they're not going to let him come back as he did everything he did. That started with the Fellowship of the Ring taking down his ass. Yeah, they big figures. Something to remember. I think we'll put a footnote in that. Not footnote, a bookmark in that for now. Maybe come back to it later. Yeah, the colonialism. How to fix it by first acknowledging it is a problem and common trope in D&D. And actually, before that, let's once again move this over a little bit so people can actually read it. Apologies. Let's see. Where is I? People think that anti-colonialism is a hallmark of the game. It means that somewhere along the way, there's been some kind of change, either in the player base or the greater culture. It's happened over the course of the daily adventure prompts fairly short D&D lifespan. They don't go into massive details below the cut, which have already opened. While D&D was never specifically endorsed colonialism, the game used to have driving factors that were direct holdovers from imperialistic tradition, the dynamic of inherent superiority over those people deemed good. Just like in our own history, these drives were seen as heroic, but seem to have rapidly fallen out of fashion, leaving an uncomfortable gap at the heart of the hobby. And I think this sums it up pretty well. The colonialism mindset. It's our blessed homeland and their barbarous wastes. Our glorious leader and their wicked despot. Our great religion, their primitive superstition. Back and forth, back and forth. It's about the framing of the two sides. And I mean, of course, early D&D is like that because they probably weren't imagining it blow up the way it is today, where minor changes cause ripples throughout the community of people taking sides and going, "No, this is my D&D," and others going, "No, but it's better." Back and forth, back and forth. But in the earliest days of D&D, the world was just divided into law and chaos, with law being also rolled in together with good, nurturing, chaos being wicked and destruction. With, again, this meme. I don't think I need to tell anyone this, but that sort of ideology is the worldview of an oppressor, one who thinks their own nation, religion, or ethnicity is right and chosen, and all others are inferior. It's the same sort of cartoonish black-white morality you see in today's fundamentalists. My enemies can't just be wrong. They have to be doing the most evil things I can imagine, ranging from being authoritarians to practicing human sacrifice and being in league with the literal devil. Let's take a pause there and just think about modern context of people saying that. Many of you know from previous streams in my Discord channel, but for those who don't, I am trans. There is so much hatred out there who say people like me, as well as gay men, lesbians, is trying to tempt people away from the good and righteous path, that we are ourselves turned by the devil himself to taint everyone else. And it's not just about sexuality and lifestyle, it's anything people don't agree with. To some degree, there are sports fans who, like, all but say that the main rival teams of their favorites are just in league with the devil or satanic pacts. Some are jokey, but some are just shy of being outright serious about it. That's why the argument depiction of Monster Fantasy Race X isn't racist. X are literally embodied evil, and thus it's okay to kill them. There are some assholes who literally use the phrase, "it's okay to kill someone," their life isn't worthy because they're trans, or they're gay, or X and Y, and things that just aren't straight and white. It's why you need to be able to recognize these minor evils so that you can actually work against them. To not accidentally create the trope-y stories that you think are harmless because it's just fantasy races. Who's going to take it seriously? Because the answer is your friends and loved ones. The ones who are actually targeted by it. Actually, I think I'm going to enlarge this. I'm going to swap over to other side real quick. Excuse me while I disappear. Pop. Alright, where's my other one? There it is. Slightly smaller side so I can go full size with this article. Well, let's see, and actually I think I can make that even a little bit bigger if I just shrink this filter a little more. Right, perfect. Okay, let's go 50. That's barely any. Okay, 150. Ooh, we can go more. 250. more, really? Jump to 4? 450 is good. We'll do that. That I can go slightly bigger, and as I just scroll down, it'll reveal more. So, alright, so chat, Ringo, this is why I'm mad about Wizards of the Coast over Magic the Gathering. OTG's nonsense, everything about Phyrexian. See, I'm not big on the Magic the Gathering lore. Like, even back when I actively played, I was never big on it, aside from it's like, what is this current set about? The last one I remember, let's see, took inspiration from Spanish conquistadors as vampires and dinosaurs. I don't remember the set, but I love that, you know, they had conquistador vampires and Ixalan, that's it. I like the setting of that. Uh, yeah, from what I've heard, some of the more recent sets have not been as interesting, so much as sounding like just an excuse to make certain content as cards. But yeah. Wizards of the Coast has been making questionable decisions. Like, the big reason I got into it, aside from family members playing it and wanting to be like them, was the art. Wild West set? Yeah, I know someone on Tumblr who made an Ox themed deck just for shits and giggles, and have been surprisingly a decent win rate on it, because no one is specifically making a counter for it. But yeah, that and all the like property crossover ones, because I think there's a Marvel one coming up. I know they did Lord of the Rings, and it just seems like cash grabs after cash grab. It's not the Magic the Gathering I know, especially because yeah, I was leading into that how aside from wanting to be like the family members who played, I loved it for the art. And as of late, their Hasbro was trying to get them to stop paying artists by going into AI art, which is fucking ridiculous. You're trying to write out the people who helped make your products great. Because, like, before I got into Magic the Gathering, I had some Pokemon cards, sure. But that was a kiddie game. It was simple cartoon art on there. Wizards of the Coast had adult art. It had detail. It looked like paintings. And they're trying to write out the part that made it set out in my minds. Extremely, I probably do need to sleep. It's oof. Okay, that should be good. Yeah, it's like the company's been making some choices. Falling into bad habits, bad patterns that are making it hard to trust them. Yeah, probably bring it back off that diatribe a bit because I know, God, I can scream at them for hours over their stupidity. So instead, just go back to this recognizing colonialism, colonialist tropes, so you can avoid them. At the minimum, giving the depth necessary so they're not just rehashing of a tired black and white morality. We'll scroll down. Come on, let me select. There we go. So the old monster manuals used to go out of their way to talk about how various species of monstrous humanoids, totally not a synonym for lesser races, by the way, spoil their environment just from living in it, that they make nothing of real value, no art, no tools. And the weapons they make are just crude constructs or stolen from their betters. Obvious connection here is that the player should feel no qualms about walking to these lands and putting them to the sword, so that the air quote real people can make use of those lands, or at least stop their encroachment on the party's territory. Here we get to the root of the issue. Trying to create a world in which it is always right for our heroes to slaughter their way through hundreds of enemies, the evolving mythology of D&D over nearly 50 years has adopted the exact same talking points used by the villains of our world whenever they felt they had to slaughter their way through hundreds of other human beings to get what they wanted. It's one of those people who others would slaughter in the pursuit of a pure world, They have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. So, at the beginning of the stream, for those who are here, you probably at least somewhat recognize the quote I'm pretty sure I butchered, but I was taking it from Skyrim. Is it better to be born good, or through great effort overcome your evil nature? I think that is a good, thought provoking question to make you think about uh, what exactly is good and evil, black and white morality, trying to find a layer of gray. But I don't think it's the best question. So, briefly in this article, we're going to go back here to let's make another handout. I can type out what I think is maybe not the right question, but a better one. Just title this morality question mark. This is a two-part question. For now, I'm just going to have the first part of it. What is the smallest reason you can think of where murder is acceptable, where it is moral to do so? And there are many questions one could think are acceptable. One response I think most people in the world would agree with is it acceptable to kill someone to prevent them killing a child or sick or injured person? That is acceptable to kill in the defense of those who cannot defend themselves. And I'm sure many of you could agree with that. That it's acceptable to kill in the defense of others. The second part of the question is how could someone who disagree with you twist those words to make it acceptable to kill someone you consider innocent? We've already touched on the topic a little earlier. With the answer I just gave, it's acceptable to kill in defense of a child. The number of bigots and turfs who think that just by being trans, I am a threat to children. They have their excuse by twisting my own words against me. I do not think this is the right question. I do think it is a thought provoking question because there is no black and white answer, ever. Not to any question of morality. The important thing is not about having the right answer, it's about being able to understand those who disagree with you. Or at the very least, predict and prepare against their attacks. As I said, anyone, well, just about anyone in the world would agree it is acceptable to kill to defend a child. Knowing that your enemies might think the same, you need to be able to put yourself in their shoes and either come up with counters of what is the definition of acceptable threat against a child, or how to keep them from making that an excuse for innocent people. As we all know, in the real world, there is no such thing as magic in the term that the witch hunts the Spanish Inquisition accused innocent women of. It was just an excuse to kill those who were their opponents or intimidate people into following them. Their justification was right, their targets were not. You need to always be able to consider what other people are like, because they are not monsters for being against you. There is no our blessed homeland and their barbarous wastes. Most people care about the place they come from. You cannot make an us versus them without requiring one side be good and the other be evil. I didn't exactly plan that aside, but I hope it gives everyone something to think on. Oh, wrong tab. Whatever excuse you can make to justify something as simple as murder can be just as easily used by those who think you should be an acceptable loss. Okay, and I think that's enough on that topic. We'll go to Barango for a bit before continuing this article. I think that's where we'll wrap up this stream today. Okay, so talked about. Oh, a little too far. Let's just the start of the current set. Native colonialism is also so is half of the Phyrexia art. Very fair. Can't decide on whether or not Phyrexians are people, and the quote unquote good guys willing to kill them en masse with no moral qualms. Rango continues, characters who got converted are written as the only moral option is a mercy killing, regardless of whether or not they consented their transformation. That scroll goes too far. Then all you need to get someone to kill someone else, to kill someone you don't like, is to convince them that person is harming children. Paraphrase the post they saw. They have if only an inhuman monster would kill a child, all you need to do is get someone to burn down the Jewish quarter, is to convince them that the Jews bathe in the blood of children. Yeah, that I can't remember what the thing is. I know it's blood something, but that lie has been told to justify anti-Semitism hundreds of years. Blood libel, that's it, thank you. It is an excuse that will not die despite so much evidence to the contrary. And it's why conspiracy theories are all dangerous. Especially because so many come down to just anti Semitism under a different coat of paint. Even something as simple as some people are secretly alien lizard men in human suits. It's just another way of saying there are secret Jews out there plotting against us, trying to control the world. Operago's got another quote, paraphrased, I'm sure. Meanwhile, if only an inhuman monster would hurt a child, all you need to convince someone that an abusive father isn't abusive is point out that he is an upstanding member of society and clearly a person. Exactly, the other side of it. If only monsters would hurt children, then all you need to do is to convince one of your own supporters who does hurt children, is point out all the ways they're not monstrous. Adolf Hitler had pet dogs he loved, and he was a vegetarian. He is still not a good person. Anyone who says otherwise has not read their history or are intentionally lying. And that is why you cannot turn your enemies into monsters just for disagreeing with you. Because as soon as you turn them into monsters, that means any correct point they can have will fall on deaf ears because they're a monster, why should I care? And it makes anyone on your side good no matter what they do. Even if what they do is... For those of you who may have been on Twitter earlier today and saw my posts, I was once a co-worker with someone who sexually harassed the young girls who worked the retail store with us. These are girls who are fresh out of high school, first year of college, trying to pay their way. This is their first job. They don't understand that being just a little too close in their personal space, playing with the name tag while it is pinned to their chest, are inappropriate to the point that person should and will get fired if management knows. I'm not going to say I was the big brother figure of the store, but I made it clear anyone who needed help could come to me. fuck, I had back issues that the best medication that I didn't need a prescription for because it wasn't that bad, according to the doctors, was extra strength Midol. It was a female heavy store, and I just made it clear it's like, you need Midol, didn't bring any, go to my locker, grab some. I don't care. I even got to the point of just putting candy in there because I know that makes people feel better. They trusted me and they came to me with these cases. And I left that store, gave them 1 month notice, and said, HR needs to handle him or I'm gone. These are the people to talk to. These are the stories they told me. This is the one person who quit, but you also need to contact. And after a month, they hadn't talked to any of the girls. And on my last day was the first time they spoke to me, just confirming my story. It's like, you thought I was giving an ultimatum because I hate this dude? No, I was giving an ultimatum because he is harming my coworkers who don't know better, who are scared. Suffice to say, he got fired 2 days after I'd left. And they burned any possible bridge for me sticking around because they dragged their feet and thought I just hated the dude. But you see, he and I were the two best sellers there. They didn't want to believe that he was a bad person because he was such a great employee. If you put a line in the sand and say one side is good, the other side is bad, you will justify good actions of a bad person as being irredeemable, the bad actions of a good person, right? The bad actions of a good person as mistakes that won't be repeated if we just talk to him. Everything is gray. Black and white morality will kill you as surely as it will kill your opponent. It's only a matter of time until you are the one being monsterized. Personal anecdotes out of the way. Let's go ahead and continue. Sorry. Let's go ahead and continue this article because I think it's important, especially for those who don't feel that they can stomach going and reading it themselves. I know it's easier sometimes hearing someone else read it for you. Where was I? See, old monster manuals made it so nothing real value, no culture, no art tools. Yes, and here we go. Here we get to the root of the issue. Trying to create a world in which it is always right for our heroes to slaughter their way through hundreds of enemies. The evolving mythology of D&D over nearly 50 years adopted the exact same talking points used by the villains of our world. Whenever they felt they had to slaughter their way through hundreds of human beings to get what they wanted. It's one of those people who others would slaughter in the pursuit of a pure world. I have a big problem with that. Surprisingly, gray morality leads to way less implicit hate crimes. If two cultures are going to war, it's not because one side is evil and the other is good. It's because that's what people in resource-scarce environments have always done, especially when they are desperate or their leader saw a chance to acquire more power. Daily adventure prompts can look at the reign of one of history's greatest warlords, Genghis Khan, and say, I think him executing whole cities and making pyramids out of their skulls was an atrocity, without thinking the people of the Mongolian steppe as a whole have and always will be servants of the Dark Lord Baphomet, demon prince of slaughter. If we abandon the justifications built into the game to make killing always a good thing, what we end up with is a diverse gaggle of fantasy species that can be played off against one another when building a setting. Sure, some of these groups may hate each other, and even commit unforgivable acts against one another. But by removing the lore itself, that the lore-based condemnations of one group, we end up creating a world where the hate, those unforgivable acts, are not implicitly justified. So yeah, if a race is irredeemably evil, that means letting them survive in itself is an evil act. Slaying them is a good act. And that is never a safe thought to follow. That is why it is important to be able to notice those patterns, both in real life and in game, so you do not accidentally trick yourself into thinking it is acceptable. Alright, now we take a sip and we will end this on a lighter note. We will do with this map of Germany, and I'll get into why it is important. Good, good, good. Okay. So, as many of you know, in previous streams, both Bootleg Identify, where we talk about TTRPGs, or my streams where I play games and talk about the stories from my sessions, I run a modern magic setting set in the modern world, where up until 2016, history was exactly the same. 2016, there's something called the Rev event, short for the Revelations event, where there's a sort of like worldwide daydream of sorts, announcing the gods were returning, that they were bringing back magic, because there's a threat to the world itself that we need to be prepared for. Campaign 1 was set in Germany. More specifically, oh, am I not on the right layer? There it is. Set up here, I think probably closer to that little outcropping of land in Germany, in a fictional town I made up called Freyford. It is sort of the quote unquote mecca of the magical world. It is an old monastery that was built in the ruins of a fortress. And after the event, all the scrolls and books that they had been copying tirelessly throughout the century, so that there are about a dozen copies of any specific work, turned out to be magic scrolls or magical grimoires full of spell work. And so people come to this town to study and learn the forgotten knowledge from before the gods took magic and left centuries before. I did this for a couple of reasons. One, in high school, I got to take part in a exchange program in Germany, and I got to see many cool sights. And I loved the openness of the country in comparison to the places I'd lived in the States. Because I've always lived close to capitals. I once lived close enough to Sacramento that I just only knew like the crowded neighborhoods and the just smoggy highways. After there, my family moved out to just outside the limits of Austin, Texas, where much the same. And going to Germany was, in many respects, a breath of fresh air. Yeah, sure, there are some busy areas and towns, but the school I had the exchange program with, which I've forgotten the name of, wasn't in the middle of a big bustling city. It was a diverse city for sure, but there are no major highways going through. We weren't all that close to the Autobahn, and most of the streets were only 2 lanes wide, with plenty of parking, with very few parking garages. To me, that was as rural as I had lived, and the openness became what I imagined medieval style fantasies to look like. Sure, some cities were kind of bunched together, but you could drive like 15, 20 minutes in what seems to be open countryside, lightly wooded areas before reaching another. And I wanted to be able to kind of relive that experience without flying back out there. The second reason was the highlight of the trip. Down here in this area, I think, of the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, there is a Swan Lake, the one that the famous ballet is known for, the old story of a woman cursed in the form of a swan. And just outside that lake, I had like 20, 30 minute bike ride, I think our tour did, was Neuschwanstein, which is often known as Sleeping Beauty Castle due to Walt Disney's using the likeness of the castle in the cartoons and movies they animated, and it was beautiful. Like a lot of it was inspired and decorated, reminiscent of Wagner's operas. It was beautiful, and I wanted a big climactic battle in the big open courtyard of the place. In fact, I think I still have the map on here. Let's see, be it on the recent side. Come on. Is it? Here it is. Neuschwanstein. I was lucky enough to find a map maker online who made a battle map for it. I think that's about. There we go. We'll zoom in so you guys can actually see, appreciate the level of detail. Because at the very minimum, this is most of the area tours can go through and look at. I had this big battle both here and on the slopes leading up to it. And it, like I said, it was the main reason I wanted to do this modern setting so I could kind of relive and have reasons to research this beautiful location. And being able to do it in the modern world helped ground some of the details that if I didn't know a good improv answer to build off with my players, I could throw up a Google search. It's one little shortcuts you're able to take with modern settings, thankfully. Yeah, the big way I've gotten around the colonialist attitude of some cultures or people being acceptable to kill. Actually, tied in pretty well with Germany. World War II really put a bad light on Germany itself. One of the things they did in response was they made it illegal to own Nazi memorabilia without a special collector's antique style license. You could not have the Nazi flag or insignia on any of your things, not on your vehicles, not on your clothing. It is a crime. You also cannot talk about Nazism on social media in Germany. There are filters on Twitter and Facebook that just don't even allow it to happen. Which, just as a side, raises the question why you can't just do that everywhere. But yeah, politics and laws like that give special dispensation to Germany and several other countries where it is illegal. So the acceptable loss, the fodder for for that campaign, were neo Nazis, white supremacists, and turfs and bigots. And there were a few different groups, which I even drew inspiration from real world hate groups. I'm not even gonna name the names I gave those groups because they were very closely inspired by actual ones, and I don't want to give them any traffic. But when the acceptable loss is a specific ideology, not a skin color, not a culture, just a political opinion that specifically calls for the murder of innocent people, that is an acceptable loss. Because while it is politically charged, if someone's political opinion is X people deserve to die, you don't need to go too far into the gray to question whether or not it's acceptable or not. Because that's like questioning the acceptability of killing a suicide bomber. It's like they actively plan to hurt innocent people. No one will question it. But it still has the nuance of you can't just go around and do it for no reason. Someone can't just be in a pub going, oh yeah, X race needs to die. The world will never be at peace until. You can't just kill them with that. The players still had to wait until they were actively causing harm, attacking people. They still had to wait for appropriate measures. Otherwise, they had to take them alive. There were some times they had to struggle with that choice. So even though it was a clear answer, they still had to negotiate the political consequences of how they handled it. Which is why I suggest if you ever need an easy, uh, disposable, nameless minion group, go with bigots, go with fascists, go with people who directly call for the harm of innocent people. And if your players ever try to say, well, wait now, let's hear them out, start looking for replacements. Because I had two such players who were very much towing over the line to see what I'd let them get away with in terms of supporting fascism. I kicked them to the curb and I found Busky and Michael, who were much better and much more creative players. Yeah, and always punch up in your campaigns. Punch up at people who have power and wish to use it for ill, never for the people who are suffering. And well, your feet. But yeah, I took joy in kicking those people from the group. By joy, I mean not saying anything, just kicking them from the Discord server, kicking them from the game, and before the next week, I had the new players ready. It was sweet. And there's the good note. Examine the political implications of certain groups being acceptable losses. Question yourself whether, like with that what if, the smallest reason you can think of, when is murder acceptable? In response, let's go and get the actual second question typed in here. There we go. Is it acceptable to murder? And can your opponents twist those words right back at you? And if nothing else, that will help you more easily maneuver the realm of gray morality versus black and white. It's been a sobering stream, and I do not wish to raid with this sort of energy. So I hope that all of you enjoy the rest of your night. Take care. Make sure to be king enough to eat, king enough to sleep, king enough to drink and sleep. Take care of your bodies, and your bodies will take care of you. I hope to see you next time, just as healthy, if not more so. Until then, I'll see you around.